Welcome to Dodgers Dogs as part of the Dodgers Daily Network. Casey Porter, Austin Brubaker. It is Friday night in the big town, and we are ready to talk some Dodgers baseball. Austin Brubaker, how the heck are you, man?
Oh, I'm doing good, Case. Good to see your face once again. Just a little bit behind the scenes talk. I literally just walked in the door maybe about 5 minutes ago. ran down to where I am into the studio here and ready to talk some Dodgers baseball. So couldn't be more excited about it. Got a nice dinner. Got to hang out with some friends. Now I'm ready to talk some Dodgers baseball. As again, we are super close to pitchers and catchers reporting. I couldn't be more excited about it.
So about a month ago, we were talking a little bit about Nolan Arenado, and I think this was probably one of the channels that squashed that faster than any other channel, just because at that point we were just starting our hot and heavy talk about not just the 40-man, but the 26, and how would that work and all this, and the numbers crunch and all that. And it just didn't seem like a move that could happen until it became very clear to the front office exactly what the roster was going to look like and how desperate it was going to be to have to clear spaces. Now you've seen the Dodgers have to move on guys like Ryan Brazier and things of those situations. So I say that to say I am not in favor whatsoever of getting Nolan Arenado. I don't like the fact of moving Max Muncy to second base and putting him at third or whatever that may do. And also, I think, I don't know, maybe Arenado. Of course, the Cardinals would probably eat some of the contract. Who knows what that structure would look like in a trade scenario. I will say this, though, and I'm riding both sides of the fences, which I'm starting to do more as I get older, Austin. Maybe that's as I chill out a little bit more, right? But I'll say this, as the roster crunch hits, it does make sense to hit a big trade target here so you can clear roster spots. That part of it, to me, makes total sense. So what is your take?
Yeah, so whenever we're talking about Nolan Arenado, I think we first have to recognize that Nolan Arenado has been a really good baseball player. There's a reason why Dodgers fans might want to bring in a guy like Nolan Arenado, a guy who's from the California area and who has had close to, if not a Hall of Fame like career to this point of his career. Defensively, he's a master at third base. Even still,
can you go over some of those defensive statistics? I don't mean to cut you off there.
Yeah, no, I can go through some of that in just a second. Yeah, okay. No, Nolan Arenado, one of the things that he's always been known for is his defense. He's won a ton of gold gloves. I don't remember exactly how many gold gloves, but even last year, he was in the 95th percentile in outs above average with 9 outs above average last year at the third base position, which last year was his age, 33 season. It's very impressive what Nolan Arenado defensively has been able to do. And then offensively, he has had a career that's been really solid. It has taken a little bit of a step back offensively wise. The past couple of seasons, let's just go through his last 3 years, just OPS wise, what they've been. In 2022, he had an 891 OPS. He was close to MVP talks. 2023, 774, drop of more than 100. Last year, dropped to 719, which is a drop of about 50 or so, a little bit over 50. And a lot of the expected numbers, the expected weighted on base average was in the 25th percentile. There are a lot of concerning signs when it comes to Nolan Arenado offensively. And when you talk about Nolan Arenado, it does not seem like there's a fit with him in the St. Louis Cardinals right now, which I think the Cardinals are looking for some other type of trade avenues as far as how they're going to move off of Arenado, because I think the expectation going into the offseason, or at least that started to unravel throughout the offseason, is that they're going to trade Nolan Arenado at some point. And now there really isn't a whole lot of other suitors, because if you wait this long to make a move to trade Nolan Arenado, other teams aren't just going to sit around and wait every single day. There's going to be some teams that are. Obviously, we're still waiting to see what happens to Alex Bregman. But not every single team's going to sit around and wait, which means that you're going to lose potentially out on some value, which might intrigue some people if they are fans of the Dodgers, if they are a fan of Nolan Arenado and have wanted Nolan Arenado to become a Los Angeles Dodger for some time, for them to want to go out and get him. And especially since we've seen an offseason, not just this year, but the previous offseason as well, in which the Dodgers seemingly get just about every single top target on the market. going out and getting a guy with a potential Hall of Fame pedigree would be the argument for Nolan Arenado. However, and I'll outline this after you respond in just a second, Casey, there's a lot of concerning signs, especially of how he would fit onto this roster, Nolan Arenado, and a lot of questions that would have to be answered before this even becomes a remote possibility. But I'm curious to see what's your thoughts on that, Casey.
So in the offseason, sorry about that, trying to get my throat going here Friday night in the big town. But okay, in the offseason, Austin, when you have an organization that sits down and starts constructing the roster, which part of the roster do they construct first? Their needs or their wants?
They got to get their needs first.
Of course. So at this point, if you're a club, and how close is it to spring training now?
We are, Monday is when pitchers and catchers report. The 20th is when games start.
So if you haven't filled all of your needs by now, you're probably not going to, right? So to your point about if clubs haven't gotten Arenado yet, that means that no club to this point has seen Nolan Arenado as a need for their club, correct?
Yes.
So they are viewing Nolan Arenado as a want. Like, hey, all right, well, if it works out, it works out. Great. If not, I mean, hey, we want him. We don't need him. So what's the big difference there? I talk about this all the time. What is the big difference between a want and a need in the baseball world? So a need is somebody you go out and you sign 10 years for, even though you don't want to, right? Because you needed an ace type of all-star pitcher. A need is somebody that you're willing to overpay for to fill a spot that you need filled, right? A want is somebody that you're only going to pay what you're willing to pay for to get into your system. And if you can't get that player at the price that or years that you want as far as the terms go, then you're not going to pick that person up. Nolan Arenado is in that second category. So that really dampens this situation for St. Louis, because whatever happens, they're not going to get near as good of a deal dealing with a club that sees him as a want instead of a need. So although I don't think the Dodgers do need Nolan Arenado, I would totally agree with that. I think at this point, because clubs are going to view him in that aspect, I think there is a scenario where the Dodgers could work out a contract situation and then also move some prospects and make it really kind of a really sweet deal that would almost be too hard to turn down. Did I explain that correctly?
Yeah. So the needs versus the wants is really key to understanding this. That let's put this in terms of the Los Angeles Dodgers and Nolan Arenado. The Los Angeles Dodgers do not need Nolan Arenado. Not at all. If they go out and run this exact team tomorrow, they're going to be a really, really good baseball team. Doesn't even matter what they do for the last two or last one offensive spots, whether they bring back Kike Hernandez or not. They're going to be a really good baseball team. So let's talk about, with Nolan Arenado, there are several different concerns that we have. One that was already addressed, the decline in his offensive production has become a little bit of a trend. And Nolan Arenado is currently under contract for the next 3 seasons. Currently, I think he's paid a lot more during this first season, then it goes down a little bit. But you're still talking about a really good chunk of money, 60, 70 million. I don't remember exactly how much it is. A really good chunk of money to go ahead and pay for Nolan Arenado. You'll be paying for premium third baseman for a player that's not played premium third base at this point on the offensive side. Defensively, Ben's phenomenal. Offensively, he's hovered more towards around a league average type of player. OPS wise, last year I said was 719. It's around a league average player, which is not the production, not what you would be paying for. That is one concern. The main concern, though, because I think there would be a lot of belief that the Dodgers would be able to help him find exactly what he needs and putting him in a better situation. Perhaps he could get a little bit closer to maybe what his 2023 numbers were, which were significantly better than 2024, a little bit above league average offensively, if you believe that. The main concern that I have is just his overall fit for this roster.
Yes.
And you talk about Nolan Arenado. He is a phenomenal third baseman, which works out really well if you want to have, let's say, Mookie Betts is your shortstop. which by all reports seems to be the way that the Dodgers are going. Mookie Betts is going to be the shortstop of the Los Angeles Dodgers, which means that you would have a really good third baseman to go up and pair with a questionable shortstop. A lot of athleticism. You don't doubt Mookie Betts, but last year was not great, especially throwing wise at the shortstop position for him. So that would shore up a little bit better, and you'd feel a little bit more comfortable defensively with him at third base than a Max Muncy. But what does this do to Max Muncy? If you bring in Nolan Arenado on this team,
Muncy won't care.
Well, here's the thing: is where do you even play Muncy?
Second base, DH on occasions when Freeman. First base on occasion, DH on occasion, kind of deal.
So here's the main thing with that: DH taken up by Shohei Ohtani every single day. First base taken up by Freddie Freeman when he is healthy, which there could be some questions if there's going to be some long-term ramifications of his injury.
Second base.
I still expect him to be at that. He's not going to be at a corner outfield, which he has not played since 2018, and that's already taken up by Michael Conforto and a Teoscar Hernandez, which means the only place to be able to put a Max Muncy is the second base position, which he has not played since the shift was banned in Major League Baseball, which I think helped him. And then you're talking about, okay, you fix one potential minor issue, which Max Muncy made a significant strides at the third base position last year. So he was about league average. Maybe let's just call it slightly below league average. Left side of the infield wouldn't necessarily be great. But then you would be moving Max Muncy to the second base position, in which case your up the middle defense would be Mookie Betts at shortstop, Max Muncy at second base. That is not a strong up-the-middle defense at all, in which case the up-the-middle defense is some of the most important defense that you have to get. You don't look to try to get the third base and shortstop position, right?
Sure.
You look to try to get shortstop and second base, your up-the-middle, your double-play combo, right? And I don't trust the Mookie Betts at shortstop, Max Muncy at second base. And here's another thing that's also important. That would also gridlock Mookie Betts into the shortstop position if you bring in a Nolan Arenado to have him play third base every single day, because you also want to play Max Muncy as much as you possibly can.
Point.
What is the fail-safe if Mookie Betts does not work out at shortstop? You have Tommy Edman play shortstop. You have Miguel Rojas, and Mookie Betts moves over to second base. Max Muncy is not taking up that second base spot. Where does Mookie Betts go? Well, he's going to move over to second base, and then what happens to Max Muncy? He's maybe a platoon bat with Nolan Arenado.
No, Arenado's that guy.
Arenado could very well be that guy.
Arenado goes to the bench before Max Muncy. There's a hot take.
And that very much could be the equation. But I think still the question is, how does he actually fit into this role if you wanted him? Because if you get Nolan Arenado, you don't play him any place else besides third base. You play him at third base because he's great at third base. Max Muncy, though, where would you put him?
Right.
It becomes very complicated if you bring him in.
You're 100% correct. And I'd say Hep C, I always love when Hep C joins, has wonderful comments and very passionate about the Dodgers. Makes a great point here that also kind of complicates the issue with Nolan Arenado, and that is not good splits against left-handed pitching. So if you want to say, hey, let's make a split between Muncy and Arenado, that doesn't really even make sense either from a statistical perspective. Yeah. I haven't looked to verify that, but I can tell you, I know Hep C well enough that I'm just going to go with that on record, because if Hep C is saying it, I totally believe it to be true. So that doesn't make sense too. So here's my pushback with Nolan Arenado, and again, I have been one of the biggest proponents of not being on board with Nolan Arenado, and I want to be very clear, I am not on board with Nolan Arenado. And for basically all the reasons that you just stated, those are just too many to overcome for me for what you're actually getting in return, which is a really, really, really good defender that's won 10 Gold Gloves, and who knows quite exactly what you're going to get on offense. Mm-hmm. So to me, there's just way too much of what you just explained to get that in return. But here's my pushback, and here, if you're in the war room and you're talking about this is what I would say on Nolan Arenado side. Say that 5 times real fast. See how it goes for you. So, number one, circling back to what I said just a minute ago, what if you can offload Chris Taylor's salary? What if you can offload Chris Taylor and send him to a Cardinals organization that you know will take care of him, and it takes care of that situation? And then at that point, Austin, you go get Kike to play that maximum. You already have Tommy Edman. I mean, you already have a guy that can play. How many guys really do you need on your roster that can play both infield and outfield? The Dodgers already have Mookie Betts. The Dodgers already have Tommy Edman, right? So how many more guys do you need that can fill both infield and outfield? I wouldn't think more than two, especially when one is Tommy Edman, and he doesn't have to be your everyday anything. He can just kind of play anywhere you want. So even if you don't get Kike, my argument would be you get to clear roster spots, and then basically all you're doing is you're trading Chris Taylor for Nolan Arenado. So what if I gave you a scenario to where this gave you a chance to remove Chris Taylor off the roster and replace him with Nolan Arenado? What would you say then?
It's a totally fair point, and it is something that is concerning to a lot of Dodgers fans. Looking at the overall numbers for Chris Taylor for CT3 last year, they were not pretty. Just to be fair and transparent. However, this is one of my pushback, and this is actually something I did not realize. We released a hot take yesterday. I did not realize that at the point that I released it. If I were to say back to you and take a guess, who do you think in the last 4 months of the regular season had a higher WRC plus? Nolan Arenado or Chris Taylor?
I would say Chris Taylor because he actually hit pretty good down the stretch.
Chris Taylor had a 110 WRC plus.
Right.
Nolan Arenado 107. Yeah. Practically about the same, but Chris Taylor was a decent hitter for about 4 months during this spare time that he had. He did not have many at bats. Yeah. He had 150 something, I think, something like that. 150 plate appearances. So it's still a decent enough sample size to be able to get at least a little bit from. And then with Nolan Arenado, I just still can't get over the defensive limitations and defensive holds, because one of the reasons why the Dodgers decided to trade Gavin, not a Nolan Arenado, but what this does for other players, if you bring him in and you have to move a Max Muncy to the second base, because one of the reasons, and in fact, the main reason why the Dodgers traded away Gavin Lux is because he can only play second base.
Yes.
If you if you have to move Max Muncy to second base, and that's really the only place that you can play him, then you're replicating the exact same issue that you decided to trade away in a Gavin Lux while bringing in a Nolan Arenado. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You talk about Chris Taylor. Yes, overall numbers do not look that great. During the last 4 months, there might be still a little bit of something. Plus, if you trade Chris Taylor away, there is no guarantee that they're going to keep him till the date of the pension, which is something that we've talked about a little bit. I believe the Dodgers want to make sure that he reaches that, given that the Dodgers seem to have a little bit of a history of doing so. And you look at all the contracts that they have, they reach out until 10 years. I think they would want to do that with Chris Taylor. So I'm not expecting that to be part of it. That would be something that would make a little bit of sense. You're offloading some of the salary with Chris Taylor, taking on a little bit with Nolan Arenado. So that's offsetting a little bit. And that's really the only player that would make sense, unless you wanted to straight up trade Nolan Arenado for Max Muncy, which I don't believe is the wisest move, because Max Muncy is under contract for significantly cheaper than Nolan Arenado and is arguably the better player than Nolan Arenado, even with his defensive limitations. Offensively, he's significantly better at this point of career. Doesn't mean that he will be in 2025, but through the past couple of seasons, and especially with what Max Muncy was able to showcase last year during the times when he was healthy, he was significantly better offensively than Nolan Arenado.
Yeah. So who would have more trade value, Chris Taylor or Nolan Arenado?
It's an intriguing question, just because, well, Nolan Arenado obviously has the longer history of being succwood. It depends on
10 Gold Gloves, dude.
And
he's a Hall of Famer, man.
Absolutely, he is. I would lean a little bit more towards him, although Chris Taylor, it's only 1 year. It's only $15 or so million. So you're not getting the length that you would be getting with Nolan Arenado. So it depends on what a team's looking for.
So that 3-year deal, I think Nolan Arenado is signed for 3 more years. Is that a positive or a negative in this situation? I think it's a negative.
Yeah, I would say it's a negative, because then you would be forced to be committed to those 3 years, or you'd be releasing somebody. You'd be gridlocked to those 3 years.
Yeah.
So,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it depends on what an organization would think about doing or how he's able to respond. This is not to say that Nolan Arenado hasn't been a good player or isn't a good player. He is a very good player. I just don't see him as being a roster fit for this specific Dodgers team. This specific Dodgers team, I think the way that they are currently constructed and the decisions that they have made throughout the offseason, some of those decisions would come into question, or some of the problems that roster decisions that they have made would come into very serious question again if they decided to go out and get a Nolan Arenado, even if they get him on a pretty severe discount, which right now, if the Cardinals are going to trade Nolan Arenado, they're going to trade him on a severe discount
because he's wanted.
Because nobody else has traded for him at this point.
Yes. He's a help wanted, not a help needed. It's that simple. Mm-hmm. And whenever it's help wanted, you only pay what you're willing to pay. When it's help needed, you're willing to pay whatever you have to pay to get whatever you need. So let me throw another wrinkle at this, and let me say this one more time. You're making a hell of a lot better argument about this than I am. I just like to cover all these different sides because I'll be honest with you, Austin, I've gotten in a lot of these conversations about roster construction over the years, and I've went into it, just kind of playing the devil's advocate a little bit, and then about halfway through I went, you know what? Dang, man, this is actually starting to make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
We actually need to really look into this, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you always need to cover every single side, but I will say, even the side that I'm playing in this, just throwing out all the different scenarios, you're making a hell of a lot better argument about it than I am right now. But then I bring up the trade value to say this. What if you were able to trade, say, a Chris Taylor and Nolan Arenado, just kind of swap out there, and then you have Arenado maybe on your roster this year and then turn around and trade him for prospects next year? What if I were to tell you this is what's going to happen? I could look into the future, into a crystal ball, and say the Dodgers are going to roster Nolan Arenado this year to eat one of the 3 years. And because the Cardinals are eating so much of this salary, he's going to be very cheap for the last 2 years of that contract. And another club's really going to want that guy. And you go trade him for some really nice prospects. What if I told you that was going to happen? What would you say then?
It's really hard to be able to argue that, especially if you know what's going to happen on the other side. You don't know what's going to happen during the season, but if you're going to trade him for some nice prospects, that probably means that Nolan Arenado is going to have a pretty good season. What that does to Max Muncy, I have no idea. That would be significantly more intriguing if you were able to turn him around into something, if you were to turn him around into a couple of prospects that were able to help with the future. But as we've seen with even the prospects that they have right now, how are they going to be able to utilize those guys into their roster in the future? Don't necessarily know. That's an intriguing thought exercise, intriguing thought, not something that I necessarily had thought of before. Right. Well, it could be also be something where they start Max Muncy at third base, and then sometimes later in games they decide to bring in Nolan Arenado and then have him come in 6th, 7th inning and be able to do that. Could be a possibility that you decide to do with Nolan Arenado, although I would anticipate him probably being in a more regular role given the pedigree that he has been in. But depending on his role, depending on the price that he gets, I got to stay open-minded about a lot of scenarios.
Absolutely. I'm way more open-minded to it now than I was a month ago for all the reasons I gave. Roster space, I think you would clear roster space. I think you might be able to find a landing spot for CT3. I think then you could turn that, you're going to get him at a discounted price because the Cardinals are going to want to move on him. He's a want, not a need. So a discounted price. And then because of that discounted price, I think even with the 2.5 years on the contract, if it's during this next season, although that's kind of long for a guy who said he's, 33? Is that what he said he is?
I think he's going into 34 season.
Yeah, so you're going to have him until he's 36. Although that's kind of long, because he's so cheap, I do think that he would be valuable in a trade setting, either halfway through this year or maybe even at the end of this year. And you could turn Chris Taylor around for the return that you would get for Nolan Arenado. Something the Dodgers did it with Mookie Betts, and we're going to go over the Mookie Betts trade on Sunday. Just absolutely incredible. I know I heard the name Matt Kemp earlier. Matt Kemp, by the way, from Midwest City, Oklahoma, baby. The Bombers, right down, almost downtown Oklahoma City. Where Matt Kemp played high school, seriously, he could throw, well, especially with his arm, he could throw a rock and hit Bricktown Ballpark. He was that close to where he grew up. So Matt Kemp, always one of my favorites. not to coach against, because I had to do that. And then JT Realmuto, the all-star catcher for the Phillies, he went to the same school district, not the same school. So there's the Middale district, and there's actually 3 big schools there. Midwest City, where Matt Kemp went. Then you have Dell City, and then you have Carl Albert, where JT Realmuto went. And believe it or not, Carl Albert was so good the 3 years that I don't think he played. I don't think he played as a freshman. But his sophomore, junior, and senior years, JT Realmuto were talking about it at Carl Albert. They were so good, Austin, that JT Realmuto did not catch on his high school team. And it wasn't because like they had to have him pitch and play shortstop. It was because the catcher they had was better than he was. The catcher's name was Zangari, and he was like the 3rd pick of the draft in like 2018 something, or whenever it was, that whatever year that was. That was one of the most. And then they had Gavin LaValle, who's still playing AAA baseball. So that was, matter of fact, I talked to Austin Barnes when Austin was down, and Austin and JT are really good friends because they came up both in the Marlins system. And he was talking about how JT was talking about some of his Carl Albert teams and how good they were and how much fun that was. So I got off on a tangent, and I did what I like to do, Austin. I like to make short stories long, right? So we have from some of our wonderful people in the crowd. What an awesome crowd we have here Friday night in the Big Town. We have a question about or a statement that one of the arguments against Nolan Arenado is that they do not want to see young Mr. Alex Freeland blocked. That's who you're seeing on your screen right here. One of the most talented young players in the Dodgers system, no doubt about that. He is a switch hitter, great athlete. He is known to steal over 30 bases. I know the home run totals haven't quite showed up yet, but I promise you, the power potential is absolutely there. This guy has every tool in the book to be a great player, and that's not just on the field. This is another Dalton Rushing type mentality. This is a guy that Alex Freeland, when you're around him, you don't really want to talk to him because he is just so focused that he just doesn't even have time to do anything other than stay in a straight line. And he's one of the most focused, hardworking players, and he is all about winning. If you are not on the field as his teammate doing everything you're supposed to do to try to win the game, Alex Freeland is going to let you know about it. He is another one of those leaders on and off the field, and he has an immense amount of talent on the field. I love this young man, so I could not agree more that one of the arguments against Nolan Arenado is you're blocking a young man that has similar skills to him in Alex Freeland that just needs opportunity, right?
Yes, no, I love that comment because I am a huge fan of what Alex Freeland, what Free is going to be able to do, and what we've seen throughout the course of what he's done at the minor league level. And you talk about his power might not actually be there. Last year, he still was able to hit 18 home runs combined between low A, double A, and triple A. He flew
really? I didn't realize he hit that many. Wow.
Flew up high A in Great Lakes last year and was just absolutely phenomenal. He's athletic. He can handle the shortstop position pretty well. He's athletic enough to be able to play probably a second base and a third base as well. Seen him do it a couple of times. However, the Dodgers are prioritizing his ability to play the shortstop position because if he can get a switch hitting shortstop that's going to steal 30 bases every single year, that has over the past couple of seasons, especially last year. Last year was his breakout season offensively, hit a 132 WRC plus combined between Great Lakes, Tulsa, and Oklahoma City. If you can get that type of talent with that type of potential, Alex Freeland has all the tools to be able to stick at the major league level, all the different skill sets. You can play a solid shortstop, and if he can do that with the offensive ability that he has, just watch out. And you talk about Nolan Arenado. Yes, Nolan Arenado plays a third base, but that limits the number of options that you could potentially have for an Alex Freeland to be able to come up, especially if you have a guy locked up to a longer term deal. With all the other deals that you have locked up to long-term deals, Nolan Arenado would be a potential block for an Alex Freeland. Free is a phenomenal baseball player. And over the course of the last 2 weeks of what he had in AAA, which I know some of the numbers don't look phenomenal at AAA, he was starting to hit the ball incredibly well. About a 160 WRC plus over his last 2 weeks with a strikeout percentage about 17%. If he can do that, he's going to be phenomenal. It's about opportunity and finding a way to be able to rise up and get an opportunity. So I'm excited to see what he's able to do, how he is able to adapt early in spring training and then early during the season in Oklahoma City, because my guess is that he's probably going to start the season in Oklahoma City just because there's maybe one roster spot that's available for Andy Pages, James Outman, or Ha-Sung Kim if the Dodgers decide to bring back Kike Hernandez, which I think is probably likely. That means limited opportunities immediately for an Alex Freeland. But if he responds, if he opens up anywhere close to what he did in Great Lakes, which last year had a 216 WRC plus and 110 plate appearances during his first month in Great Lakes, if he does anything close to that, or 150 WRC plus, he puts that up for 2 months, you will see Alex Freeland in Los Angeles, and you will see him get regular playing time because he is just that good. Still, next year he's going to be entering his age 23 season. Switch hitter, shortstop. That's exactly the type of prospect that you want in the system.
Yeah. And don't forget, in 2023, the year that James Outman finished second in the Rookie of the Year, he was not at all scheduled to be on the opening day roster. As a matter of fact, he, like the first 3 weeks of spring training, he was hitting like 990 or something. Of course, I'm exaggerating, but I mean, he just was absolutely going off. And they still were talking about it was going to take an injury. I think it was Gavin Lux who got injured. And it opened up a spot, and James Outman took it and then ran with it. So I say that only to say right now it does not look like, no matter what Alex Freeland does in spring training, there is not a spot for him. Okay? It just doesn't look like that at that moment. I do think that he's in way more competition with Ha-Sung Kim than a lot of people think, because Alex Freeland is a great athlete, not a good athlete. He is a great athlete. The guy can cover range. He can steal 31 bases. That tells you all you need to know. So I'm not saying it's like an ideal scenario, but it's, I mean, this is like going back to T-ball, right? I mean, sometimes as much as things change as you go up through the system, and as complicated as they get, sometimes they never, they stay the same, just the same way. And what I mean by that is, if a guy can play shortstop at the level that he can play it, okay, then, and he's the type of athlete that Alex Freeland is, 31 stolen bases, that kind of deal, you can't convince me that he can't play second base. If Max Muncy can play a major league second base, I promise you Alex Freeland can play a major league second base. And then also, there's no doubt that Alex Freeland can play third base. So this is a guy that can play all three infield positions if needed. Second base I think second base would be like a Dalton Rushing and left field type deal, where you would need to probably put him down there for 70 or 80 games and let him get comfortable from that side of the infield. Maybe not quite that many. But having said that, even if he gets hot right now, I don't see where that roster spot is open for him. But I will say I do think he's in more competition than maybe people think. But it would have to be a James Outman type 2023 spring training.
Yeah, I think that likely is what it's going to have to be. Also, here would be what my recommendation for Dodgers fans is. Be patient with this type of guy, because here's the thing about Alex Freeland is he probably at this point gives you the greatest chance with the most upside offensively at the shortstop position, the most promise that you're going to have in this system for at least a little bit. There are some talented, incredibly talented, even better than Alex Freeland at the shortstop defensively position, like Nolan Miller, incredible defensive shortstop within the system. Sean McClain, phenomenal defensive shortstop. Those two are really phenomenal, but they haven't succeeded offensively at the highest levels like an Alex Freeland has. So if he does get an opportunity, be patient, let him work through some things, because Alex Freeland is a grinder. He's going to work his way. He spent an entire season in Great Lakes with about league average-ish numbers during the 2023 season. Then once he was able to get more adapted, once he went into the next season, just exploded off of the gate. I think if you have patience with this type of guy, he's the guy that has all the tools to be something really special at the offensive level of plate. There's a reason why every single one of the people that are following prospects has Alex Freeland circled, it's because he is just that good. And you talk about defensively, he did have to play a little bit of second base because, as I had mentioned, Noah Miller is phenomenal at shortstop.
Yes.
They split time early this season, looked decent enough when he was at second base, so I don't think that's going to take him too terribly long moving from a shortstop to second base if that is needed. But also we have concerns about Mookie Betts long-term at the shortstop position. Alex Freeland could be one of those guys, especially since there's not a whole lot of shortstops that will be free agents for at least a couple of seasons. Alex Freeland could be the guy that's able to help carry that mantle, and defensively wise fits in really well with some of the future of the Dodgers coming forward over the next couple of years, with potentially Max Muncy either after this season or after the 2026 season moving off of the Dodgers potentially, or not being under contract, with Mookie Betts perhaps not being the shortstop long-term and maybe be in second base. There's going to be some potential openings for Alex Freeland to be able to make his way on. It's about opportunity, and it's about how does he respond and how does he actually go out and start this season. If he starts the season incredibly well, watch out. You're going to see Alex Freeland in a Dodgers uniform soon.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun for me to follow Alex Freeland, and because we've been talking about this guy ever since they got drafted at UCF. Matter of fact, Cameron Decker went to UCF. Cameron Decker, who had a 10 RBI game, that is a single game record for amount of RBIs in one game for the Rancho Cucamonga Quakes entire franchise ever. Cameron Decker, that was the same game. He got 6 hits, 10 RBI, same game that Kenny George got 5 hits. Amazing game. It was an incredible game. But anyway, I say that to say Cameron Decker grew up in Indiana and committed to UCF and actually was in Orlando on campus the summer before he was getting ready to start his career at UCF when he got drafted. And he got drafted by the Dodgers. And so already on campus with UCF, Cameron Decker decided to go pro and become a Dodger. And one of the big reasons why is he had a conversation with Alex Freeland, who also went to UCF, and kind of explained, well, hey, who better to call than a guy who played at UCF and now plays for the Dodgers, something that my exact same path. So Cameron Decker called Alex Freeland, and Alex told him just how good the Dodgers system is. And so with UCF being in the Big 12, now they weren't in the Big 12 the last year Alex Freeland was there, but knowing they were coming to the Big 12, I watched them a lot because they were really good. And Oklahoma State went to a regional down there 4 or 5 years ago. And so I got to see Alex Freeland quite a bit in college. Just the Dylan Campbell deal. You know the narrative from Dylan Campbell from me from day one, right? And so it's fun to see people catch up with that as time goes on, because you've been seeing it since they were in college or whatever, and now all of a sudden they get a little bit closer. And like I always say, you do need to wait till they're in AA, AAA, because there's a lot of adjustments to make. And Alex has had to make a lot of those. You mentioned them several times. So you do need to wait to get euphoric or whatever. But like a Dylan Campbell, it's finally fun to see everybody else now catch on to what they actually have been forever, right?
Yeah. No, it's really fun to be able to watch all of these kids grow and become professional, real Major League Baseball players. Just watch them develop throughout the system is a really fun process. I'm excited to see that from a Cameron Decker during this upcoming season. I'm assuming that he's going to spend at least a significant amount of time in Great Lakes. They will be in Indiana coming up in June, I believe in South Bend and Fort Wayne. I'll be at a whole bunch of those games during that, and Fort Wayne again, late July, early August. So, oh man, I'm excited to see him hit some bombs on the Buttle Street this upcoming season.
Hold on.
Oh,
Hold
yeah.
on. Let me pause this, because this is worth catching all of this. Okay, give me just a second here. Ready?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. Cameron Decker, take off. Kapow! Woo! Look at that. Do you see the ball anywhere? Oh, no. There it goes. It finally came into the screen. Look at that, though. If that's not good enough for you, for Cameron Decker, who, by the way, finally healthy. And he was actually known as the Barry Bonds of high school football or high school baseball in Indiana, because here's another long home run right here. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Wow. You talk about a guy that can absolutely mash the ball. So he was a guy that actually hit 3 home runs in his first game as a senior year. He hit 5 home runs, I think, in his first 6 at bats, something like that. And then was like they wouldn't pitch to him and all that. So we're not going to get off totally on Cameron Decker, but I wanted to show you those 2 home runs because You talk about I'm talking about Cameron Decker like I did Alex Freeland. Again, I'm going to say it again. You got to wait to see the adjustments he has to make and all those kinds of things. But like Alex Freeland, the guys typically that use the big part of the field, the middle of the field, are the guys that can make the adjustments because they're not relying on timing. They're not relying on being perfect out front of your swing to pull the ball or being perfect at the back of your swing to go the other way. They're kind of the guys that give themselves the best timing, because if they're a little bit late, they go the opposite field gap. If they're a little bit early, they go to the pull side gap. That's Cameron Decker. That's always been Alex Freeland. They always have used the big parts of the field, and that's, to me, one of the big indicators that, yes, they do have big tools, big talent that can hit the ball a long way, but also I think that's going to translate to success as they continue to jump. So you excited about seeing that young man?
Oh, I couldn't be more excited about that. I think if you're sitting out, if you get some lawn seats this upcoming season at Dow Diamond, which I think season game tickets will be coming out relatively soon. The season game passes are available right now. Go get yourself some lawn seats and go catch a couple of Cameron Decker home runs. In fact, not just a couple, catch a whole bunch of them. And if you're too cheap to get inside the stadium, go stand right outside the stadium, because there's going to be a couple that are headed that way. Cameron Decker, I'm really excited about what he's able to do.
Okay, Austin, time to do your magic again. We are going to cover another guy that you're going to see a lot of in spring training. A lot of. You know who that is?
Who's that?
Do you see him?
I see him a little bit, yeah.
That's Edgardo Henriquez.
Whew.
So, yeah, go ahead and pull up the numbers on him. Of course, the story behind him is he had Tommy John, and he was a starter and had always been a starter. Matter of fact, I sat with 2 or 3 professional scouts. One from the Phillies. The other one, I think, was a Padres scout. There's a Padres scout that comes to a lot of the Oklahoma State games, too. Always wears a cowboy hat and always kind of dressed up in Western. Never can remember I think his name's Dustin or Dusty. But anyways, I say that to say they remember Edgardo Henriquez as a starting pitcher. So Edgardo Henriquez has always had this big stuff. I mean, like a guy that can approach 100 miles an hour. Kind of Bobby Miller-ish type stuff, right? But he was a starter. So he was never in a position to where he could just go out there and just throw the snot out of it and just not worry about it and max out. So like almost all these young arms, he has Tommy John, right? And he recovers from his Tommy John. And this time last year, he was coming off his Tommy John, and the Dodgers smartly put him in the spring breakout game. And he came out in the spring breakout game, and I think like his second pitch was like 100. And we were like, whoa, wow, look at this guy, right? And so what the Dodgers had done is they had moved him to the pen, and that allowed him to just go out there and max out. And so now instead of being a 98, 99 mile an hour starter, which is ridiculous, I mean, that's like Dustin May, Bobby Miller type range. Now he's hitting 104 out of the pen with a bullet slider that he can hit 94, 95 with. So, I mean, just video game type stuff. Edgardo Henriquez, the Dodgers did him perfect. So here's the situation with him as far as the logistics, and then I will let you get into his stats and take a deep dive into the analytics of Edgardo Henriquez. But the reason why he got called up last year, obviously very talented, but the biggest reason why the Dodgers pulled him up, the same reason why I think Alex Freeland will get a call up this year, and that is he was going to be Rule 5 eligible for the Rule 5 draft. So the Dodgers were going to have to put him on the 40-man roster in the offseason, no matter what, because if not, then somebody's going to take him in the Rule 5 and they're going to lose him. That was never going to happen. So knowing that Edgardo Henriquez was going to have to be put on the 40-man roster in the offseason, why not put him on it in September and get him some major league time, get him in a major league locker room, get him on a major league mound, get him a little bit of playoff experience. So when he comes now into his sophomore year as a reliever, now he has all that underneath his belt, and now we can really see what Edgardo Henriquez can do, which is quite a bit. But again, okay, it's all about not necessarily sometimes the control, but it's about the command. The command has not caught up with the stuff yet, but we saw even against the Padres, even with some of the greatest hitters in the world, he has a lot of margin for error. He can still miss a lot of locations. He can still miss the strike zone, get himself in bad situations, and then get himself out of them because his stuff can overpower even the best hitters in the world. We've seen it with our own eyes.
And we have not seen the best version of Edgardo Henriquez yet. His stuff can be overpowering, which it absolutely is. You mentioned the 104 miles per hour fastball, the second hardest velo within the Dodgers organization. I think the first hardest is Ronaldo Yin. I think he hit, what was it, a 105 or something ridiculous like that. Both of them throw ridiculous, absolutely insane amount of heat. Edgardo Henriquez is phenomenal. If he's able to refine that, if he's able to have command on each one of his pitches, he's going to be unstoppable with what he has. And he was just able to bully his way through the minor league system in a way that was unprecedented within this Dodgers system. Started off this season because he had dealt with a lot of injuries. He was just coming back for the first time since 2022 pitching in the system. Started in Rancho 5 games as a starter. He started out as a starting pitcher this season. Then they had to move him up to Great Lakes. Spent 8 appearances there. Then they're like, you're too good for the Midwest League. Go up to Tulsa. Spent about 16 games there. You know what? You're too good. You got to go up to AAA. And once he was at AAA, waited until it was the September call-up and got his opportunity for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Last year, combined at the minor league level, he had 3 appearances at the big league level in the regular season. We don't need to get to those statistics at this moment, even though it's 270, 120 expected ERA. During the minor leagues with his 53 innings, put up a combined 272 ERA with a 274 FIP, 320 expected FIP. And you talk about the insane swing and miss stuff. He was able to strike out 39% of hitters last year, walked at about 13%.
Do you know what the average major league rate is for striking out hitters? You said it's 39% for him. Do you have any clue what the average major league rate is?
The average major league strikeout rate would maybe be 20 something. I don't know, 24, 25, something like that. I don't know exactly what it is for a starting pitcher. It's ridiculous for Edgardo Henriquez. It is insane what he's able to do to get swing and miss, and that's because his stuff is completely overpowering, and it overpowered every single one of the hitters at the minor league level. Hitters hit 188 off of him at the minor league level last year, and that's including some bad luck that Edgardo Henriquez had. He had included a high batting average on balls in play, or at least a little bit high batting average on balls in play when he was giving up the few hits, the few times that hitters were able to make contact. Edgardo Henriquez is phenomenal. The stuff, as Dodgers fans got to see, is insane. If he's able to control that, if he's able to have a little bit of command and know just about where it's going to go, it's going to be unstoppable. Edgardo Henriquez, you have to circle him. And if he makes a ton of strides, if he makes a lot of progress, and if you see him as effective, he's going to be one of the better pitchers on your mound. And you talk about Dodgers needing a guy for an up and down train. Part of the argument for that is to leave space for a guy like Edgardo Henriquez.
Yeah, so definitely Edgardo Henriquez is a prospect to watch in spring training very, very, very closely. I mean, like in Oklahoma, we have tornadoes. We're getting ready to go into our tornado season. So you have like all these levels, like slight, moderate, severe. And then whenever it's like one of those days where they just know there's going to be tornadoes and like long track tornadoes, they call it a PDS, a particularly dangerous situation. So if you were talking about the way that you need to evaluate Edgardo Henriquez in spring training in terms of whether or not he can help the big club, he is not moderate, he is not slight, he is not severe. His impact is particularly dangerous situation. He is a PDS in terms of him knocking on the door at being a major contributor to the major league level. Again, just really just an injury away from maybe being a mainstay. So, hey, we have a couple of comments here in the chat here. No, the Nolan Arenado deal has not happened. That is actually, if you look at the headline, that is actually a question mark. The question mark to that is the Nolan Arenado rumors have heated straight back up. We covered that right off the bat at the beginning of our show about all the different scenarios of what would make sense as to why to take Nolan Arenado, why not to. We covered all different sides of that. So if you want to get back into that Nolan Arenado talk and kind of hear some of the reasons why the Dodgers would, some of the reasons why the Dodgers wouldn't, that is at the beginning of our show. But Austin, I wanted to talk some more about some of the prospects to watch in spring training. You know, that's what we've talked about, this roster stuff, and there's really not a whole lot else we can cover at this point other than the hot topic of Nolan Arenado today. So let me throw out, I don't want to call it a sleeper because he's been really high on a lot of people's list, but his momentum, I would say, I think this would be fair, and I think his dad might be watching, and who knows, he might be too at some point. But Ronin Kopp, due to injury, due to not always being in the strike zone quite as much, I think, if you asked him, as much as he would like. But Ronin Kopp, let's not forget, this is a guy that can also almost hit 100. I mean, if you look at the way that he crossfires here, hides the ball there, I've seen him many times in person. You have too. This dude, man, he's one of those, as soon as the light bulb goes off, not that he's been bad or anything, but he hasn't reached his potential yet. So if that light bulb goes off and he actually starts commanding, like Edgardo Henriquez, now he doesn't have the margin for error that Edgardo has because he doesn't have the 104, right? But he is left-handed. A lot of Madison Bumgarner to what he does there. Kind of looks like him, kind of body type and the way he pitches as well. But if he ever did just get total control of and command of what he's throwing south to home plate, Ronin Kopp's a guy that could do a lot of damage at the major league level. So I think this is a guy kind of coming in under the radar, if you will, that if he got on top of his game, could really make Dodgers fans go, oh, wow, look at this guy.
Yeah, no, Ronin has all of the skills, all the tool sets to be a phenomenal pitcher. Got to see him for the entirety of the 2023 season, and he was phenomenal in 2023. An ERA under 3 at 2.99. And he spent a lot of the time as the starter, but even with that, even with his transition to the bullpen, combined strikeout percentage of about 36% in the Midwest League was just great. The one thing that is holding him back right now is his command, is his ability to throw strikes. Last year, his walk percentage was about 18%, which is not going to be anywhere close to what you need to.
Not trying to throw shade.
And that's not trying to show shade. Ronin is a phenomenal pitcher, and his stuff when it is in the zone is phenomenal. It's going to get a lot of hitters out. It's high velo. It's a tough angle to be able to combat it when it's going at it. It's really good stuff. And Ronin is an incredibly hard worker, and he wants this incredibly bad. He's got an incredible support system around him to be able to do that. And even with that, even with the results that he had last year, he still had an ERA of 4.17. That's not bad at all, or any shape, way, or form. And even last year, still had a strikeout percentage of about 31%. He's still getting a lot of swing and miss. He's still able to have all of the tools, all the skill set to be able to be successful. If he can get that, if he can limit a lot of the walks, if he can get that under control, he's going to be a major league pitcher. That is the one hurdle for him reaching the major leagues. He is just that talented to be able to do so. And I'm excited to see what sort of strides, because he knows it. And I'm sure he's working incredibly hard to do what he can to not take away from any of this stuff, but be able to go out there and be able to find ways to be able to limit some of the walks so he can be just that much more effective. Ronin Kopp is an incredible pitcher within this system. And yes, when players have a down year, especially at the minor leagues, people can write them off almost instantly. We saw that happen at the major league level with 100 at-bats with James Outman. Everybody's writing him off. Don't completely write off Ronin Kopp quite yet.
Oh, no. Heck no. And like I said, I don't mean to be negative about him or trying to throw shade. Really kind of what my point is I think he's better than what he's pitched in the last year.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, I think he's capable of doing a lot more and showing a lot more than what he has. Now, again, a lot of that's not out of his control because he has been injured. But is that a fair statement to say that he is capable of producing better results than he has?
He is much closer of a pitcher to what he was in 2023 results-wise than I think what he was 2024. And I think he, as far as talent-wise, much closer to that. He has the ability to produce even much more, which if he does, just watch out. I'm excited for Ronin. I'm excited to see what he's able to do. He was highly regarded beforehand. You talk about this time last year. He was on a lot of people's lists, or on almost all of the lists. He can return to that status just like that with a quick start this season. And I'm excited to see him be able to do that.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, hey, we have a unbelievable super chat from our residential rock star, CNAV, our wonderful moderator, Christopher Navarro. $50, Austin. That means 25 goes to me and 25 goes to you, because that's the way CNAV rolls. And by the way, that's the way we roll, right? You did mention that you had to go down to your studio. Is that right?
Oh, this is just a place where I record.
I was going to say.
It's a really fancy studio around here. It's my room over here, the home studio. This is the one place that I can be able to do with my Loons posters in the background, Grem Loons, and then missing Rally Camel, $2,009 reward. This is the home studio that we got. I actually got a couple other posters. I've got a little bit hiding, so those will make an appearance at some point.
Yeah, fantastic. Hey, it's $50 super chat, CNAV. We cannot thank you enough, man. You are an absolute rock star. Your support for our channel, I can't tell you how much it's appreciated. It's just absolutely fantastic. And for putting up with us for all this time. Hey, Austin and I are on the air for, I don't think also people realize too, you're on the air for, okay, so what we go on, you go on Mondays, I go on, typically speaking, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday for like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
That's 4.5 hours of live talk, right?
Yeah.
And so
every single week for the entire off season, from the World Series ending until right now, until the start of spring training.
So you get to see all of our good points, and you definitely get to see all of our warts. And so, it's kind of like a team. You're only as strong as your weakest link. We try to improve our weakest links as much as we can, and we get a lot of correction. Trust me, I get a lot of emails. I get a lot of direct messages about how we can improve the show and how this person sucks or that person sucks or how you suck or whatever. I get a lot of those. I can tell you that. And so I'm kind of say that to say 4.5 hours of live show. There are times where we're not absolutely perfect, and I'm transitioning that into saying, you Dodgers dogs out there are always right on spot on there, right in there with us in the trenches. I use the term foxhole all the time. You guys are always in the foxhole with us, and CNAV is definitely at the top of that list, and we cannot thank you enough. Great idea here, too. One of our live shows is to go ahead. So what we can do, actually, better than that, CNAV, if you have the MLB extra innings, you can turn that in, and they'll kind of flip around from one game to the other and give analysis from one game to the next. So what CNAV is wanting is like for us to have a live show one night each evening where we're kind of flipping through the different games, and you and I are analyzing the games over the video that we're watching and analyzing the players that are up to bat and doing all that kind of stuff and dropping into each game maybe when a game gets exciting here or there. So that might be a pretty neat idea. Although I will say this, the highlights that we show of these guys are just that. They're highlights. So if you actually watch a minor league game, it's going to be quite a bit slower than what you're seeing whenever we do these prospect shows like this.
Oh, yeah. No, it's going to be a little bit different. Obviously, the game of baseball, it's instant action every single time. There are pauses. You got to wait and anticipate the moment where things are able to come, and you never know what that's going to happen. There could be a game when Alex Freeland goes 0 for 4 with a couple of strikeouts, and that's just the game that you're able to have. But that happens throughout the game of baseball with how difficult it is. It still would be a fun to be able to do that, to be able to go through a lot of these games, especially because the Dodgers games, especially here on the East Coast, they don't start until 10 o'clock Eastern time, 7 o'clock Pacific. A lot of the other games of the affiliates, especially with Great Lakes, typically starts at 4 o'clock Pacific. And then Tulsa and Oklahoma City will start at 5 o'clock Pacific. Being able to go through and check on those games. Honestly, when I do shows throughout the season, especially if it's like a Wednesday show, and it's a 5 o'clock Pacific show or 5:30 Pacific, I'm typically watching the Loons games as I'm on air because that's where I want my attention a lot to be. So going through and doing type analysis on that would be a lot of fun. Also going through and checking in on some updates on some old friends as well. I was going through and trying to figure out where some of the former Dodger hands are going to spend this upcoming season. And got to like, hey, I didn't realize that he was going to be there. Going in and checking on those guys. And then throughout the season or looking into seeing who the Dodgers are going to play and doing a little bit of scouting on them. There's a lot of fun ideas of what we could do throughout the course of the regular season when Casey and I have the time to be able to do so, because during the regular season, I'm running around with the Loons quite a bit, but we'll still try to get out as many shows as we can.
Yeah. So we have a Twitter comment here from BlueFan1410. This post in response to the broadcast tonight, point one, Muncy versus Lux. Lux could only play second base, while Muncy can play first base, second base, and third base. So he has flexibility. Point number two, Alex Freeland. Been very high on him since he got drafted. Don't think an Nolan Arenado deal would block him, as MM is only under contract for 2025 with a $10 million what's a CO? $10 million
club option.
Club option, yeah.
Yes.
For 2026. As noted before, he also has flexibility to be a solid bench bat. And Freeland plays shortstop in 2026 with MB at second base. With MB at second base. Point number three, while Arenado has struggled against left-handed pitching in 2023 and 2024, his career splits are solid. So career splits, here's his career splits. Right-handed pitchers, 281, 334, 500, 834. And versus lefties, 297, 365, 564, 928. Matter of fact, let me do this right here and let you, this is such a good post. I'm kind of butchering this, which I'm very good at doing that. I'm not afraid to admit. So look right here. Okay, this is what I'm talking about. Here, let me go ahead and blow that up so you can see it a little bit better than that. Okay, see that right here? Okay, yeah. So yes, this is a great point that he did not have good splits last year against lefties. But these are his career splits right here. Okay, this is a great point from BlueFan1410. See, Austin, this is why we go out on all the different platforms. We're out on YouTube, we're out on Twitter, we're out on Facebook, we're out on Instagram, we're out on TikTok. How about that? I am a high-tech redneck. And so this is why right here. You get great stuff like this from BlueFan1410. These are his career splits. You got anything to say about that?
Yeah, no, it is totally fair. And the Blue Fan 1410, I think there might be an extra one on there. Totally fair. And they bring up a lot of really good points right there with Nolan Arenado. I think it's important to look at a lot of the career splits while also acknowledging some of the most recent splits. As he had mentioned, he struggled the past couple of seasons against left-handed pitching. But overall, if you look at the big sample, if you believe that Nolan Arenado is closer to the career type hitter, then you would argue that, hey, he's probably a little bit better than left-handed pitching than we're actually giving him credit for. I think that's totally fair, and I think he probably would be a little bit better than what maybe we might be expecting or what he had been giving over the past couple of seasons against left-handed pitching. That's totally a fair point, and it's also a fair point that when we talk about Gavin Lux, him being exclusively a second base position, Max Muncy wouldn't technically be that because he could technically play a lot of other positions. The point that I was trying to make with that is he would be gridlocked into that position if you brought in a Nolan Arenado, because you would be playing Nolan Arenado at the third base position. And just given because of the number of spots that the Dodgers have and the players that are currently part of this roster, Freddie Freeman is taking up first base for the next couple of seasons, for I believe 3 more seasons. You talk about Nolan Arenado, he would be under contract for 3 seasons. Max Muncy would have a $10 million club option. And yes, he could be a phenomenal bench bat. He would be the best bench bat, I think, in the league and would have a ton of power, and you could utilize him potentially as a pinch hitter. I just don't see that necessarily happening with a player like a Max Muncy. The thing that would happen, unless there's an injury to a Freddie Freeman, which is totally possible, I'm curious and hoping that there's a lot of good health for him at the start of the season. The only way to be able to fit Max Muncy on the 2025 roster, if you wanted to play Nolan Arenado close to full time, would be to play him at the second base position, which I don't think is the best defensively. But yes, it's totally a fair point. Nolan Arenado, a little bit better against left-handed pitching, perhaps is what we're giving him credit. Max Muncy has a little bit more flexibility with the Gavin Lux, but might be gridlocked in it to the point where he would be put in a similar situation as a player like a Gavin Lux was over the past, was going to be entering in the 2025 season. And then the other point that you were trying to make as far as a Alex Freeland potentially not being blocked by Nolan Arenado, I think all that would do was just limit some of the options or limit some of the availability for him to be able to come up. Because my anticipation, similar to, I believe that the Dodgers are going to keep on to Chris Taylor for most of the season, even though in this scenario they might not, because you might trade Chris Taylor for Nolan Arenado. Let's just say that's the case. My initial indication was that the Dodgers would want to keep a Chris Taylor to make sure that he reaches that 10 years. Max Muncy reaches his 10 years if his $10 million club option gets exercised, which if that is, that's taking up another roster spot, and that could limit some of the options, some of the availability for an Alex Freeland to be able to come up and be part of this roster full time, especially because that moves Max Muncy to being almost exclusively a bench bat. So It depends on your evaluation. If you believe Nolan Arenado is closer to his career hitters, then you're not worried about the splits. Sure. And then you want to go out and get Nolan Arenado because you believe that he is a Hall of Fame, great defensive third baseman with great upside offensively, in which case you do whatever you can to bring that type of player in. I'm a little bit more skeptical that he is that type of player. I think he's a little bit closer, maybe he's a little bit better than what he has been in 2023 and 2024, but I think he's a little bit closer to that. And if he's a little bit closer to that, meaning just a little bit above league average offensively, it becomes a little bit more difficult because I think that creates a couple more problems than what you're anticipating. That's my argument. Totally fair to have different points, and I'm glad that you brought up different points and we're able to push back on that, because that type of feedback, those type of arguments are the most fun.
That's the exact type of back and forth that we love, right?
Yes.
Just great comments like, hey, what about this? Hey, how about this? Well, here's that. And then like Steven Richter is saying right here, that's a BS post because the last 2 years is more representative of what Arenado will provide in the future. Plus his contract is terrible. I can't argue with that. But then again, if somebody else were to say like you did, okay, well, I don't disagree with you, but I think his entire career would suggest that maybe the last 2 years were worse than they should have been and that it won't be quite that bad moving forward. So I would tend to be the guy that would look at his entire career and the last 2 years and say it's probably, it's never as good as it seems or never as bad as it seems, and try to average out between the two and say that he's probably better than he has been the last 2 years against lefties, probably not ever going to be as good as he was with his career numbers. So can you deal with something that would be in the middle of those two? That's where I would go.
Yep. It usually is somewhere in the middle. That's usually, there's usually a fair assumption or a fair guess that you can have with a lot of this stuff, with a lot of different statistics that say, I don't know, probably somewhere in the middle. And I think that's ultimately what's going to happen with Nolan Arenado. He's probably going to be a solid, decent player. Could be a really solid player. Do the Dodgers have room for that? Or what additional challenges does that make? Those are the questions that you have to answer if you want to bring in somebody like Nolan Arenado.
Yeah. Super Katakata says Arenado had his chance to be a Dodger. Hope Boston picks him up now that he is declining. Hey, Chuck Huddleston, way to go, Chuck. Thank you so much. Super Chat, $19.99, Austin. Chuck's a rock star.
Yeah, Chuck is awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for that. We really appreciate that here at Dodgers Daily. Dodgers Dawgs, part of the Dodgers Daily Network. Couldn't be more thankful for you guys and just your continued support that you've had throughout this entire offseason.
Yeah,
it's been unreal, unbelievable what you guys have been able to do. Can't thank you guys enough for that.
Hey, why does it seem like that Arenado's going to be Yankee? Why am I saying that? Am I on an island there?
Honestly, I have no idea where Arenado is going to go at this. It wouldn't completely surprise me. Nolan Arenado is Yankee. Yeah. He would pair up back with Paul Goldschmidt. Paul Goldschmidt is now a New York Yankee, so that would be reuniting them from St. Louis to New York, so that could be a possibility. Boston, as was mentioned, I think is in a lot of rumors as being a potential possibility, although I don't know if they want to give or lock up third base long term with some of the younger guys that they have coming up that they want to leave room for. I have no idea where he's going to go, which leaves the door open potentially for the Dodgers, or at least you have to ask the question, because a lot of Dodgers fans would want Nolan Arenado on this team because he's a really good player.
We didn't get our Ferris Bueller deal with Jackson Ferris and Walker Bueller. So at some point, Max Muncy needs to go back to the A's. I think maybe some Dodgers fans forget that he actually came from the A's and needs to play with the other Max Muncy. And so it needs to be Max Muncy and Max Muncy on the infield, right? I think the other Max Muncy.
No. You talked a little bit earlier in the show. You bring in a Nolan Arenado and then you trade him for prospects. Well, how about you get Nolan Arenado and then you trade him for Max Muncy?
Yeah, there you go. Even better. Yeah. Even better. Okay, hey, I think we're going to finish up here with one more prospect, and I'm going to be very, very, very honest, and this is Alec Gamboa here. This is a guy that has had the Dodgers have had a lot of chances to bring him up, and they have not to this point, right? He's a guy that doesn't have stuff that kind of a left-handed version of Landon Knack. I mean, he can throw it up there 96, right? I mean, typically speaking, he's going to be 92, 93, 94. He hit 99 in Sacramento a couple of years ago, but he's from California, and he had all his family there, and he was all hyped up, and so he just kind of had a little bit extra adrenaline that night. But again, this is Alec Gamboa, and I'm not necessarily, of course, I like Alec. I would love to see him have his chance, and I would have total faith in him if he took a major league mound. But I'm bringing up Alec Gamboa here because I just hope the Dodgers do right by this guy. Let him spend. He's a diehard Dodgers fan. Grew up in Fresno. If you watch right here, you see the number and you see the wind up there, left-handed. He idolized Fernando Valenzuela growing up. Okay, he was an absolute idol. His family is all diehard Dodgers fan. Grew up in California. Dodgers, do right by this guy. When a spot opens up, bring up Alec Gamboa and let him pitch at Dodger Stadium against the Pirates. I know the Pirates are like the Washington Generals, that team that always plays the Globetrotters. They're always the team that I make fun of on the show, right? But anyways, bring up Alec Gamboa. Let him throw one. You're going to win the division by 74 games. Bring Alec Gamboa up to the major leagues. Let him pitch one day at Dodger Stadium in front of all of his fans at Dodger Stadium on the same mound that Fernando Valenzuela pitched on. And then whatever you want to do with him that night after you gave him that opportunity, do with him that night. I don't care. But do right by Alec Gamboa. Bring this dude up. Now, don't bring him up to pitch in Philadelphia. Bring him up to pitch on Dodger Stadium where his family gets that entire experience. And then after you do that, again, I don't care what happens. Do right by him. Let him pitch one time on Dodger Stadium.
No, that would be perfect. Even if it's just one game for Alec Gamboa, because he has given a ton to this organization. We've talked a lot about his story, his upbringing. You talk about his hero and his dream to be and pitch for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Well, he's in this system, and he's been in the system for quite a while. And it's not like he's been bad in this system. And anyway, even last year, 2024, pitched a 3.30 ERA in the Pacific Coast League, one of the most hitter-friendly environments. Mm-hmm. Did not have a lot of swinging miss stuffs, bounced between being a starter, being a little bit of a reliever, gave a lot of innings to the Dodgers, 73 2/3 innings. Last year, cut down his walk percentage from about a 14.5% to about 10%. Last year was under 10% for Alec Gamboa. He was able to get a lot more control out of him, and he was still able to have a lot of success. Look, we see each and every single year, the Dodgers bring up a bunch of random people from outside the organization, call them up, have a little bit of major league experience, and then after a couple games or after one game, they decide to move off of them, designate them for assignment. There always is going to be those type of candidates. Why would you not, for a player like an Alec Gamboa,
that's my
if
point,
you have him in your system, why would you go for somebody who's outside the system if you're just going to use them for a couple of innings or a game or two? Why would you spend it on that type of role rather than reward it for a player like an Alec Gamboa? And Alec Gamboa, it's not like you're anticipating him giving up 200 runs in a game. You are still expecting him to go and put up a fight, and especially with a guy who's dreamed about this his entire life, is going to go out there and be loose and have fun and pitch in Dodger Stadium. It would be phenomenal to be able to see that journey, that culmination of him being able to do that, and perhaps establish himself into some type of big league type pitcher type of role. We see the Dodgers footprint throughout the other major league teams. I was going through it quite a bit, and there is a lot of former Dodgers that are part of other organizations that could receive some type of role. I would love to be able to see a player like an Alec Gamboa get an opportunity in the place that he has grown up and that he's absolutely loved throughout his entire life. And if that's all the opportunity that they want to give, if it's just, hey, we need a couple of innings, we want to make sure that a lot of other guys are rested, we're already going to win the division by 10, 15 games, why not give an opportunity for an Alec Gamboa and give back to some of the players in this organization, especially because with the Dodgers, you already look at the outlook for a lot of different prospects. It doesn't look too bright, particularly because this Dodgers is in a win now mode.
Yeah, of course.
There's not going to be a lot of opportunities to do the prospects right and give them the opportunities, the much needed playing time that they deserve. So why not create at least some good bit of hope, some bit of optimism for these guys to be able to fight for this? Not just, hey, you could play on 29 other teams. It is hey, we recognize what you're doing. If you put up a lot of fight, we're going to do everything that we can to be able to treat you right, and to be able to showcase that with a player like an Alec Gamboa, I think would be absolutely phenomenal to be able to do. So we'll see what happens. This roster is incredibly crowded, and there is a lot of people who are even on the 40-man roster who deserve opportunities and are going to get opportunities because he would have to jump over a lot of other players that are on this roster. But there could be an opportunity at some point this season. If there's one player within, especially in Oklahoma City, who's just going to be sitting around and deserves to get an opportunity, it's a player like Alec Gamboa.
I'm saying make him your DFA guy. If you need a guy for a spot start and then you need a guy to put on the 40-man to DFA, don't go get a veteran from another. Whoever the pitchers are that you go get, like what Brent Henriquez was supposed to be. Don't go get that guy. Just throw Alec Gamboa out there, then DFA him, then let him try to find a trade partner and try to make a. So I'm not asking you to put Alec Gamboa on the major league roster, make him part of the postseason, and I'm not asking any of that. I'm just asking him to make him the sacrificial DFA guy to give him one shot at Dodger Stadium, because this is a guy that's been a starter. They moved him to the pen. They moved him back to starter. And about 8 different times 2 years ago, they moved him up to AAA, back down to AA Tulsa, up to AAA, back to. And you know how many times he bitched and moaned about it? Absolutely not one single time. And I know for a fact he didn't. Not only did he not like bitch to the Dodgers and outwardly or in front of his teammates, he didn't bitch about it at all, because I'm just telling you, he's just thankful for every opportunity he gets. So if you're talking about somebody who absolutely has paid his dues and deserves at least that DFA shot where he can pitch one time at Dodger Stadium, get that one moment, and then get a trade partner and see if you might be able to build a major league career where else in an organization. Of course, best case scenario, he gets to be on the Dodgers, but I mean, let's be realistic. That's all we're trying to do here. And so that's all I'm saying about there. So, hey, what a great show, Austin. We've rambled on for about an hour and a half here. Do you got any final thoughts?
Yeah, it's Friday night in the big town, or big town. Friday night, it's just fun to be able to do Dodgers Dogs. Next Friday, we'll be talking more about the Dodgers, except they'll be in spring training. The pitchers and catchers will have been reported for 5 different days. We're just a couple days away from that. It is really exciting. There still is, because it's still the offseason time, there's still some questions. Okay, what exactly could go down with the Dodgers? Could they bring in Nolan Arenado? While I'm highly skeptical of that taking place, you never know with this Los Angeles Dodgers or front office. They seem to be making all sorts of different moves to help improve this club. And who am I to distrust the Dodgers front office at this point, at this stage? They seem to have a plan for just about everything. So no matter what moves that they do make, I trust this front office and what they're able to do. They've been able to bring us this amount of great players. They produced a decade-long run of winning baseball, of postseason baseball. Now the Dodgers over the past decade have 2 World Series championships, and we're looking at another decade plus ahead of many World Series championships to come. It is an incredibly exciting time to be a Los Angeles Dodgers fan, and the season is just about ready to get started. Spring training is going to start on Monday with pitchers and catchers reporting. As soon as pitchers and catchers reporting, player like a Clayton Kershaw could be coming back to the Dodgers. A player like Kike Hernandez could be a very real possibility for the Los Angeles Dodgers coming back. We'll see what happens, what the Dodgers plan for him is, and if they want to go, how they want to navigate their roster if they bring in a Kike Hernandez. There is a lot of different options the Dodgers can go down. All good stuff, because no team in the game of baseball is better positioned at the start of 25 to win the World Series than the Los Angeles Dodgers. And that is exactly what every single fan base would want. And that is exactly what the Los Angeles Dodgers, your defending World Series champions, are entering 2025.
Definitely. Don't forget to hit the like button. Leave a comment, too, in the comment section, not just here on the chat. And if you haven't done so, hit that subscribe button. So, hey, Austin, I want to thank you so much for joining. As always, you just did an absolute rock star job. What an amazing crowd we had tonight. Friday night, the big crowd in the big town. You Dodgers dogs out there are the absolute best. So until next time, which will be Sunday night, which I will be by myself, we're going to cover all the different trades the Dodgers have made to get in the position.
Are you going on during the Super Bowl?
Good point. Might not go on Sunday. Play it by ear. We'll see how that goes. Good point, Austin. Yeah, so that's a very good
game.
point.
Sorry. The big game.
Play it by ear. I'm not a big NFL fan, but play it by ear. Maybe not. We'll see how that goes. But, hey, I would like to say thank you so much for tuning in. It is a great day to be a Dodger, as I always do, because I like to do this, Austin, and you can take it. I like to put you on the spot as we leave Friday night in the big town, Arenado or not for the Dodgers.
I'm going to say no Arenado for the Dodgers.